Hari Ram, Hari Ram. Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari, Hari. Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari, Hari. Krishna, Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram, Hari, Hari, Hari Ram, 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 Hari, Hari. Krishna, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, 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 Hari, Hari, Hari. Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, Hari, Hari Ram, Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari, Hari. Krishna, Hari, Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram. Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari, Hari. Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, Hari. Okay, devotees, let us begin. Whoops. Tonight is our 29th. Is it 29th? I think, yeah. 29th program of Bhakti Vaibhava seminar, Srimad Bhagavatam. So welcome to everyone. And we are getting to the end of the 7th chapter of the first canto. The son of Drona punished, and it's the whole dramatic story of what to do with Ashvatama after he killed the sleeping children of the Pandavas and Draupadi. And it's really quite something. Different opinions from different sides, including from Lord Krishna. So, okay, let's get into it. First of all, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyatyadeshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha, Kripasindubhya evacha, Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, so here we are. We're in the last section. We're in the last section of the 7th chapter of the first canto. And, well, we just mentioned some of the remarkable things that are happening. And, yeah, it's all very difficult. What to be done? What to be done? So let's get into it. So, first of all, is verse 54. And if I remember correctly, there's 58. Anyway, there's 50-something verses in this chapter. And you never know, we might possibly finish this evening. In fact, we should try to finish, actually. We're meant to do a chapter a week, so we should try to finish. And then next week we'll start with chapter 8, the prayers of Queen Kunti. Oh, very interesting chapter. So, okay, here we go. Verse 44, here is the translation. It was by Dronacharya. So this is Draupadi speaking. This is Draupadi speaking. This whole sort of a debate, you might say, back and forth. What to do with Ashvatama? Kill him? Just let him go? Or what? So Draupadi Although initially she was really, naturally she was certainly grief-stricken, but she would have been happy to just get his head. But now her mood has changed, and she's become very mercifully inclined to Ashvatama, who was the son of Dronacharya, and Kripi, who was the daughter of Kripacharya, another great Brahmin. So this is the translation, verse 44. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. So it's an interesting subject, I guess. Prabhupada explains that Dhanur Veda, military science, was taught by Dronacharya with all its confidential secrets to the Pandavas and to others. That was what he did. He taught military science with Prabhupada, what is referred to as confidential secrets of throwing and controlling by weapons by Vedic hymns. Whereas today, gross military science is dependent on material weapons. Means like guns and bombs. They're fire weapons. Even guns are called firearms. And so they're all based on fire. But these weapons, they're based on mantra. Yes. So, and it involves, as Prabhupada says, the art of throwing arrows saturated with Vedic hymns, which act more effectively than gross material weapons like machine guns or atom bombs. So yes, the control is by Vedic mantra or the science of sound. And Prabhupada makes a point that in Ramayana it's said about Maharaj Dasarath, the father of Lord Ram, that he controlled arrows by sound only. He could pierce his target with his arrows by only hearing the sound without seeing the object. So it's a much finer military science. And yes, so Draupadi is feeling obliged, and well, at least she feels that Arjuna should feel obliged, because Arjuna's the heavy one here. He just wants to wipe him out. So yeah, should feel obliged to the father and therefore not hurt the son. In the absence of Dronacharya, the son was the representative. This is a standard part of Vedic culture. In the absence of the father, the older brother is the head of the family and is meant to be accepted like that. This is very traditional. Right, so that's Draupadi's opinion. And, well, Prabhupada raises an interesting question. How is it that Dronacharya, this, really like Paka Brahman, rigid Brahman, Prabhupada says, should be teaching military science, and what's he doing fighting in the battle of Kurukshetra? He's a Brahmin. But, as Prabhupada says, the reply is that a Brahmin should become a teacher regardless of what his department of knowledge is. A learned Brahmin should become a teacher, a priest, and a recipient of charity. A bona fide Brahmin is authorized to accept such professions. Yeah, okay. All right. course, why he should fight in the battle anyway, okay. Let's not get into it too much. Right, so verse 45. Draupadi continues. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. I mean, it was really taken like that. A very serious point. It's not just some sort of sentiment or something. But really, that if the son's there, the father's there. So, yeah, and she points out, verse 45, his wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. And Prabhupada discusses about Kripi, who's the sister of Kripacharya, the sister. Yeah, so she was a devoted wife, described as being the better half of her husband. Even nowadays, sometimes that's said. Yeah. So the point here is that if she had not had children, then she could have just voluntarily embraced sati and just walked into the fire, just like that. But because there was a son there, therefore she didn't, because she had to look after him. If she didn't, who was going to look after him? So, a widow is a widow only in name. If there's a son of her husband existing, just a widow in name only means not the real thing. Just happens to have the name, but she's not really that. So, yes. So one way or the other, Ashvatama is the representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashvatama would be like killing Dronacharya. Anyway, that's one of her arguments. Sati. I told you, I think I mentioned before, we were traveling from Jaipur to Delhi by train, and there was some businessman there in the same compartment, and we were talking with him, trying to preach to him, and somehow this subject of sati came up, and this gentleman said, "My mother was a sati." And he was proud of it. Yeah. Then there was another case in Unchigaon. This young girl invited us to her house, just near the temple, just past the temple, up on the hill there. So we went to the house, and the mother gave us some chas, some buttermilk, and life was going on. And she pointed to her daughter and said, "Yes, she will be a sati." And I remember so clearly, the daughter looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, okay. Verse 46. O most fortunate one who knows the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectable and worshipful. I mean, there are certainly elements of what Arjuna was trying to tell Krishna. I mean, in certain respects, this is very much like that. Yeah. So anyway, there's a very short little purport there. A slight insult for a respectable family is sufficient to invoke grief. Therefore, a cultured man should always be careful in dealing with worshipful family members. Yeah, that's true. And verse 47, just a sec. Verse 47. So this is still Draupadi speaking to Arjuna. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I'm aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. This is amazing, isn't it? What sort of consciousness? I mean, it's such an elevated consciousness that Draupadi's suffering, just suffering, because of the murder of her sons by this person. But she's thinking that I don't want the mother of this man to suffer like me, so please don't kill him. I mean, it really is. Let's just read the purport. Sympathetic good lady as she was, Srimati Draupadi did not want to put the wife of Dronacharya in the same position of childlessness, both from the point of motherly feelings and from the respectable position held by the wife of Dronacharya. Of course, she just lost a husband. He was killed. Yes, so it's really, it's very amazing consciousness. You know, if it's like Krishna conscious, it's really Krishna conscious. If it's just sort of being emotional, it's so deeply emotional. It's really quite amazing. Okay, verse 48. Just a sec. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmin order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon them all. Yeah, okay. Well, that's really quite a point. If anybody offends a real Brahmin, like really offends them, then the family and all the connections of the offender are just it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very heavy. You know, it's interesting, in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Lord Ram, yes, twice it's said about how people in the battle for Lanka, how different warriors died because of the offenses against Sita. First of all, it's said that just the soldiers of Ravana, that they were killed because of the offenses of Ravana to Mother Sita. You know, probably, maybe none of those soldiers actually offended Sita like directly, but because they're working under Ravana, then they had to take some of the reactions due to their, you could say, their employer or the person in charge of them, their head. And it works like that. And then second time is when Ravana is dead, and what's her name? The wife, main wife? Mandodari comes to his dead body and says basically, just look at you. You've achieved this through because of the anger of Mother Sita. Yeah, this has happened to you. So we shouldn't underestimate, we really shouldn't underestimate what can happen if offense is there. Even small offense, but particularly if there's some important offense, like a major offense, it comes back. It comes back. And, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the story of Ramachandra Khan. You may be familiar with that. He's the one who sent the prostitute to try to corrupt Haridas Thakur. Then later, when Lord Nityananda was traveling with a party of devotees, quite a party, so they came to the village where Ramachandra Khan lived, and he was like the big man of the village. And they were asking people, do you know where we could stay? And the people said, you must go to Ramachandra Khan's place. He's the big man. He's got big property and plenty of space. You can stay there. So they went there. And actually, Lord Nityananda asked Ramachandra Khan, can we please stay here? And Ramachandra Khan, in a very deliberately sarcastic way, said that, our place is not good enough for you. There's down the road is a milkman who keeps cows, and he has a big barn. You can all stay in the barn. And Lord Nityananda, Lord Nityananda, he sometimes was extremely expressive, and he got really expressive. And he told Ramachandra Khan that you're right. Your place is not fit for us. You're right. It's actually fit for cow-killing meat-eaters. And shortly after, the local Muslim tax collector came, and Ramachandra Khan had been trying to dodge taxes, but this fellow just took over the place and threw Ramachandra Khan out. And for I forget how many days it was, it may have been 3, they killed a cow in the domestic temple they had. Yeah, and etc., and ate the flesh there in the Durga temple. And then the whole town or village, the whole village fell to pieces. There was like a sort of an epidemic there of something. So many people died, and then the others just left. And the village was abandoned. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that, just see, because of the offense of one person, what happened? So, it's really true. It's really true. It doesn't just, one person makes an offense and that's the end of it, particularly if it's a higher level person. So anyway, yeah. So Draupadi is saying in verse 48 that we must not offend the Brahmins. And then verse 49, Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmins, King Yudhisthira fully supported the statements of the Queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion, and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. So that's quite something. And there's a bit of something of a purport here that, Yudhisthira was the son of Dharmaraj, Yamaraj. That's not discussed so much, what may have been the effects of being fathered by Yamaraj, who, as Prabhupada mentions here, he's also known as Dharmaraj. They say, at least some say, that Yamaraj is known as Yamaraj when he deals with the sinful people, but he's known as Dharmaraj when he deals with the pious people, because he deals with both. And it's said, some say his planet is Pluto, and the sunlit side is where the pious people go to be prepared for their next body, and the dark side is the side where the sinful people go to be prepared for their bad bodies, hellish bodies, like that. So, anyway, one way or the other, Yudhisthira supports Draupadi's position. I mean, he's a real gentleman, Yudhisthira. Like when they were exiled in the forest, from time to time, Bhima and Draupadi, because Draupadi, she's a Kshatriya woman and she's fiery. She's really very strong. Sometimes they get angry and they'd express their anger. Why are we here in the forest? Let's just go and get them now. But Maharaj Yudhisthira would always say, it's okay, just relax. It's nice living in the forest. It's very sattvic. So, by Krishna's plan, things will get worked out in due course, so let's not get carried away. Right, so, so in the purport, Yudhisthira is fully supporting the words of Draupadi in actually asking Arjuna just to release him, just to release Ashvatama and let him go. That's all. Yeah. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that one should not tolerate the humiliation of a member of a great family. Unlike nowadays, the royal family of England, I don't know if you ever sort of see what's going on there. It's just, a lot of it, it's bizarre. It's just bizarre. Oh, Krishna. It's really bizarre. The immorality and the foolishness. Oh, Krishna. And because they don't practice not tolerating the humiliation of a member of a great family, It's all over the newspapers all the time. What this one did and that one did, and Prince Andrew. It's Kali Yuga. There's no standards. There's no standards. So, and again, Prabhupada mentions that Arjuna and his family were indebted to the family of Dronacharya because of Arjuna's, and all of them, learning the military science from him. If ingratitude was shown to such a benevolent family, it would not at all be justified from the moral standpoint. And that the wife of Drona, Kripi, who was the half body of the great soul of Dronacharya, should be treated with compassion. She, we mentioned she had just lost her husband just a few days before, and now she may lose her son, and I think maybe only son. So it would, Draupadi and now Maharaj Yudhisthira is supporting that to put her into grief further like this is just not nice. Because we're talking about compassion, it's just not a nice thing to do. So that is compassion, Prabhupada says. Such statements by Draupadi are without duplicity, because actions should be taken with full knowledge, and she is in full knowledge. In the sense, the feeling of equality was there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience in losing, 5 sons. Yeah. So she knows what she's talking about. There's no duplicity, it's just very much to the point. A barren woman can't understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was quite to the point. Yeah. And it was glorious because she wanted to show proper respect to a great family. So we are just going through steadily here. Verse number 50. And it looks like it's got no purport, is it? It's got no purport. And verse 51 too. And verse 52, which, okay. Anyway, right. So let's go. Verse 50. Nakula and Sahadev, the younger brothers of the king means Yudhisthira, and also Satyaki, Arjuna, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies and others all unanimously agreed with the king. Just see, Krishna has changed his opinion from trying to convince Arjuna, you must kill him, you just have to. You already promised you would. So don't beat around the bush. Interesting, Satyaki, he is the general, the chief of Krishna's army. Satyaki. And if you remember in the battlefield, in the battle of Kurukshetra, Duryodhana did a sort of, not a wager, but some sort of, you could say a wager, with Yudhisthira, that whoever Well, Krishna said, first of all, Krishna said, in this battle I will not fight, but my army will fight. But I won't fight. And then he said, tomorrow morning, whoever wakes me up first can choose, have first choice, whether they want me, who won't fight, or my army, which will fight. So Duryodhana was thinking, yes, we got to get the army. Oh my God, who would want Krishna who's not going to fight? Oh. So he positioned himself right by Krishna's head. Whereas Arjuna positioned himself, where do you think he positioned himself? By Krishna's lotus feet. And Krishna was sleeping on his back. So they're waiting there. Duryodhana's like here, right next to Krishna's head. And Yudhishthira's right down the other end. So Krishna's sleeping. Then he woke up and he just lifted his head straight up and looked straight down his body and saw Yudhishthira. And Duryodhana thought, oh no, look at this. Oh no, I've lost everything. So Krishna said to Yudhishthira, so what do you want? Me who will not fight, or my army which will fight? And Yudhishthira said, I will take you, my lord. And Duryodhana thought, wow, he's stupid. It's my lucky day. And so he took Krishna's army, and that means that Krishna's army was fighting against Krishna. And Satyaki is the chief. He's like the chief general. But he survived the battle. Many of them didn't. But Satyaki survived the battle. And, well, when we reach the 11th canto, devotees, Haribol, there it's described how after the battle, those who had survived and who were on Krishna's side would mock the few who survived who were on Duryodhana's side. And Satyaki was one of them who had been on Duryodhana's side because of that arrangement. And when they went to Prabhasa Kshetra, and for some reason they started doing demigod worship, then they started drinking rice wine, then they started mocking Satyaki, that, you were on the wrong side. Oh, who are you? What do you think you are? And mocking him, and there was a few others from Krishna's army who survived, although they were on the other side. And the others were mocking them. And so a fight broke out. And they all killed each other. That was the end of the Yadu. Well, not the end of the Yadu dynasty, but the end of the warriors. Right, devotees. Verse 51, which also doesn't have a purport. Bhima, however, angrily disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit who had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. I mean, that's just so bad. So anyway, so that's Bhima. That's Bhima. He's hot. He's got a really hot temper. So he just thought, off with his head. Yeah. Shoot first, ask questions later. That sort of thing. Yeah. Right. So anyway, there's no purport there, so we go on to verse 52. Chaturbuja, the four-armed one, Krishna, or the personality of Godhead, after hearing the words of Bhima, Draupadi, and others, saw the face of his dear friend Arjuna, and he began to speak as if smiling. Not exactly smiling, but, like a very mild smile, or as if smiling, which is Hasan Eva in the Sanskrit. Eva can mean as if smiling. So anyway, so Arjuna's perplexed. So interesting point here about Chaturbuja. You might think, why on earth do they now, Sutta Goswami, refer to Krishna as being four-armed? Anyway, let's read through the purport. Lord Sri Krishna had two arms, and why he is designated as four-armed is explained by Sridhar Swami. Both Bhima and Draupadi held opposite views about killing Ashvatama. Bhima wanted him to be immediately killed, whereas Draupadi wanted to save him. We can imagine Bhima ready to kill while Draupadi is obstructing him. Wow. And in order to prevent both of them, the Lord discovered another two arms. How's that? That's really, isn't it? That's deep thinking. That's Sridhar Swami. Yeah. Originally, the Lord displays only two arms, but in the Narayan feature he exhibits four. Yes. In his Narayan feature, four-armed, he resides with his devotees in the Vaikuntha planets, while in his original Sri Krishna feature, he resides in the Krishna Loka planet, far, far above the Vaikuntha planets, in the spiritual sky. Yeah, there's an interesting story. There's an interesting place. Come with us to Govardhan Hill, and hopefully we're going to go there. It's called Paita. Were you there with us in Paita, four-armed deity? It's the same village where the twisted tree is. So anyway, Paita, it was the spring rasa dance which begins at the southern end of Govardhan Hill. And Krishna had disappeared from the gopis and gone to Paita, which is a village, it's probably 3 or 4 kilometers from the end of Govardhan Hill, something like that. So he disappeared, and as a result, the gopis were angry. They were really angry. So Krishna, and they were approaching, they were going to find him. Krishna didn't know what to do. So Krishna manifested an extra 2 arms, and the gopis came and saw him, and it was like, wow, what's this? It's Krishna, but no, he's got 4 arms. It's Lord Narayan. So they came and offered obeisances to Lord Narayan, to Krishna with 4 arms, and said, Namo Narayanaya, dear Lord Narayan, please tell us, which way did Krishna go? And Krishna, as Lord Narayan, became so overwhelmed by the transcendental potency and the emotions in the air, that with his forearms, he just started pointing in different directions. I think he went this way or that way or maybe this way or like that. So now in Peta there's a fairly substantial temple. It's not a small temple with a four-armed deity of Krishna. It's not Narayan. Everywhere else you go, I mean, not everywhere maybe, but the vast majority, it's two-armed Krishna. But here it's four-armed Krishna. Yes, okay. So here Krishna, according to Sridhar Swami, Krishna manifested two extra arms to keep the two of them apart. Right. So therefore, if Krishna is called Chaturbhuja, there's no contradiction. If need be, he can display hundreds of arms, as he exhibited in his Vishvarupa shown to Arjuna. Therefore, one who can display hundreds and thousands of arms can also manifest four whenever needed. So, yeah, and then the last little paragraph there, it's mentioned that Arjuna's perplexed, he doesn't know what to do. And he's the one who's holding Ashvatama. So therefore, as Prabhupada says, that when Arjuna was perplexed about what to do with Ashvatama, Lord Sri Krishna, as the very dear friend of Arjuna, voluntarily took up the matter just to make a solution. And he was smiling also. Right. Okay. Where are we? Verses 53 and 54. So Krishna is going to sort it out. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna said, a friend of a Brahmin is not to be killed, but if he's an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You have to fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasen and me. Sure. It's very complicated. It really is very complicated. But anyway, Krishna is going to sort it out. There's actually 58 verses in this chapter. So there's a few more to go. Right. So, So in the verse itself, there are four considerations. 1, a friend of a Brahmin is not to be killed. 2, but if he's an aggressor, he must be killed. And 3, so there are four considerations. Number 3, you have to fulfill your promise to your wife. And 4, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasen and me. Yeah, but Krishna is going to sort it out. But anyway, Arjuna was perplexed, Prabhupada says, because he has to be killed as well as spared. It's just like you have to stand up and sit down at the same time, or something like that. Yeah, according to different scriptures. So as a Brahma Bandhu, or worthless son of a Brahmin, just say, worthless son of a Brahmin. He was not to be killed. But still he's an aggressor. And according to Manu, an aggressor, even though he is a Brahmin, and what to speak of the unworthy son of a Brahmin, is to be killed. Dronacharya, Prabhupada makes the point, Dronacharya was a Brahmin. He was the real thing, even though he fought in the battle. But he was a Brahmin, in the true sense of the term. But because he stood in the battlefield, he was killed. But although Ashvatama was an aggressor, he was standing there without any weapons. He's just defenseless. Yeah. So the ruling is, Prabhupada says, an aggressor, when he's without weapon or chariot, cannot be killed. So all these were certainly perplexities. And on top of that, as the verse says, Arjuna has to keep his promise to his wife, just to pacify her, plus also to satisfy Bhima and Krishna, who advised killing him. This dilemma was present before Arjuna, and the solution was provided, but was awarded by Krishna. Okay, so here we go. Verse 55. Just then, Arjuna could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders, and thus, with his sword, he severed both hair and jewel from the head of Ashvatama. He just did it. Suddenly it just clicked, and he just did it. He cut off the hair and the jewel from the head of Ashvatama and sort of gave him, as we understand, and I saw there's a picture in one of the Bhagavatams. I don't know if it's current, but at least before I saw a picture of Ashvatama after this whole thing, and he looks really weird because he had long hair. Kshatriya had long hair, so he's got long hair like shoo, and then no hair, and then long hair, and no hair, and then long hair, and he really looks odd. And the way it was painted, he looks like he's really anxious. And such an embarrassing situation to be seen by people like that. So Prabhupada says, contradictory orders of different persons are impossible to carry out. So therefore Arjuna, by his sharp intelligence, understood what the correct compromise would be. So what he did, cutting off his jewel and his hair, or quite a bit of his hair, that was as good as cutting off his head, yet his life was saved. And here, well, it's interesting. Here, he is indicated as twice born, Dvijasya. Yeah, Dvijasya. He's referred to as Dvijasya, twice born. Although he's not exactly. So anyway, the thing is, now you might say, what's this? Cut his hair, cut off the jewel, as opposed to cutting off his head? What's this? What sort of punishment is this? I mean, it's a punishment, but it's not very serious if you're going to, really punish someone for really doing something extremely terrible. To just cut their hair and cut off the jewel from their head. Of course it's something, but it's not that much. But, the codes the social standards of those days were such. Of course, he's not a Kshatriya, although he was fighting. He's a mixed-up person, Ashvatama. But one way or the other, he would become a laughingstock. And particularly for the Kshatriyas. And, he was sort of part Kshatriya and part sort of low-class Brahmin or something like that. For people like that, embarrassment in front of other people is considered worse than death. Particularly for the Kshatriyas, it's considered worse than death. So therefore, what Arjuna did, it's not just some little sort of offhand thing which isn't really so consequential because he could have just killed him. But still, it's a serious thing. It's a serious thing. So verse 56. He, Ashvatama, had already lost his bodily luster due to infanticide, and now, moreover, having lost the jewel from his head, he lost even more strength. Thus he was unbound and driven out of the camp. And in the pastimes of Krishna and the Pandavas and all this, Ashvatama, as far as I recall, is never mentioned again. He just becomes like a non-entity. But they say, as if I remember correctly, they say he's living in the Himalayas somewhere. Did you hear that, Bhagavath Prabhu? I'll check it. But I have some recollection, as far as I remember, that he's living up there somewhere. I'll check though. So in other words, as Prabhupada says, thus being insulted, the humiliated Ashvatama was simultaneously killed and not killed by the intelligence of Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And in verse 57, I guess it's Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami makes an important point. Cutting the hair from his head, depriving him of his wealth, and driving him from his residence are the prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmin. There is no injunction for killing the body. So that's interesting, isn't it? There is no rule. There just is no rule for killing the body of the relative of a Brahmin. So that was Sutta Goswami. And the next verse, which is also the last verse and doesn't have a purport, it's also Sutta Goswami. Thereafter the sons of Pandu and Draupadi, overwhelmed with grief, performed the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. Hare Krishna. So, devotees, we have just finished the 7th chapter. Maybe I could just ask and see if any of you have a question. And if not, or if you have, but then we finish them within the next 15 minutes, we can start reading chapter 8. I don't know about those online, if they're actually able. Where are they? If they're able, in a position to ask questions. Yes, okay.
It's from few classes away. Well, it's about Narada Muni, basically.
Oh, wait. The mic. Yes, you'll be broadcast over the world. Oh, well, anyway, I guess just say it and I'll repeat it into the microphone. So, Narada Muni.
Is Narada Muni a part of different creations and different yugas? Is there always Narada Muni, and it's always the same person? It's not a host.
Yeah. According to my understanding, it's not a post. He's a person, specific person. And now he's eternally in that position. But of course, before he wasn't. He was the son of the maidservant. Same person, same living entity. And even before that, when we reach either 7th or 8th canto, I forget which one, but it's either 7th or maybe the 8th. When we get there, when we're doing Bhakti Vedanta in about 5 years or 4 years or something, then you'll see that in the previous lifetime, he was like a Gandharva, some type of demigod, like a minor demigod singer. But he got cursed to become a Sudra. And that's how he ended up as the son of the maidservant, Sudra birth. Yeah. So, from what we can make out, there was a period of time when he was not Narada Muni. And only at a certain point he became Narada Muni. But since then, and it's going to go into the future, he'll be Narada Muni. Okay?
There's a follow-up question about basically also Narada Muni. Why in Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni didn't become Narada Muni, so evolved personality just from one birth. There were several. We had a little discussion about it in our student group. But why in Bhagavatam all of his previous births were excluded? It made it look like as if he perfected his spiritual life within one lifetime.
Yes. Okay, so the question is, devotees, it seems that he became Narada Muni very, very quickly, more quickly than you'd expect, just in one lifetime, right? And that's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah. That's what happened. As Prabhupada said, you can go back to Godhead at the end of this life. Yeah. And we should try, actually, for that. Yeah, it was quite remarkable what happened with Narada. Any other comment or question? Even from any of you online, I'm looking at Facebook right now. If anyone on Facebook has a question, put it in now on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm going to start. We've still got 10 minutes. So I'm going to start reading something from chapter 8. At least go over the sections. What are the sections? It seems there's nothing. Okay, anyway, that's all right. Right, so let's just have a quick look, introductory sort of look at Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit saved. So chronologically, this is just carrying on immediately from where we've just been at, the punishment of Ashvatama. It's like, I think it's the next day, or maybe even the same day, but I think it's the next day. So, there are 4 sections here. First section A, from verse 1 to verse 7. And I call it funerals after the Battle of Kurukshetra. Funerals plural. Then, the second section B, from verse 8 to verse 17, Ashvatama tries to kill Parikshit. Verse 8 to verse 17. Ashvatama tries to kill Parikshit. It's a second Brahmastra. Having failed with his first Brahmastra, he has another go. Phew. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? Then C, prayers by Queen Kunti. That's from verse 18 to verse 43. That's her prayers, which are just some of the most amazing prayers. They are really just truly such outstanding prayers. Verse 18 to verse 43. Anyway, as we see, Ashvatama has not completely gone. Yeah, he's going to be going pretty soon from section B. But anyway, okay, prayers by Queen Kunti was the third section, 18 to 43. And then section D, the fourth section, Yudhisthira's lamentation, verse 44 to 52. Yudhisthira's lamentation, which leads us into chapter 9, his lamentation that so many, vast number of people died just so I could become king. So I'm responsible. And what am I going to do? I'm just going to be crushed by the sinful reactions. Anyway, that's, for not this coming week, but the week following also. Yudhisthira's lamentation. And then in chapter 9, Bhishma preaches to him and Bhishma passes away. Right, so the first section, I think I'm just going to leave it for Monday, because if I read through it, we'll all forget it by Monday. But it's the description of the funerals, that happened. And it's chronological. It's like the next day after this whole controversy what to do with Ashvatama. Okay, devotees, let me just see if there is a question there. Oh yeah, there's a question from Marie Filion. She's here, is she? Okay. All right, so Marie asks a question. If we remember the spiritual master at death, will we reach the spiritual world? Srila Prabhupada was asked that basically in one form or another on a number of occasions, and Srila Prabhupada always said yes, it's the same as remembering Krishna. Yeah, it's the same. So you'll go to be, if you remember the spiritual master, you'll go to be with the spiritual master. And the spiritual master, generally, will be with Krishna. Yeah. So you'll reach the spiritual world. Anything else? Yes?
In the purport, 1721, there's just a little section mentioned that Krishna takes away the mind of the devotee and rewards them with pure transcendental love. Could you please elaborate a little bit? What does it exactly mean that he takes away the mind of the devotee?
1:7, yeah?
1:7, yeah,
21,
if I'm not mistaken.
21. Oh, in the purport, is it? Just a sec. Okay, 1:7:21. And there in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, 1:7:21 doesn't have a purport.
Maybe I'm mistaken. I planned to formulate a little bit better.
I tell you what, look it up, take your time, and on Monday we can look at it. First thing. Yeah. Okay, devotees. Well, hang on, let me just see. I think there's another question in the chat. So here, yeah. Govardhan Prabhu is asking, any idea what were the ages of the 5 children killed by Ashvatama? Well, they were children. So they were children. Exactly the ages we don't know, but they were not old enough to be warriors, like Abhimanyu, right? He was the son of Arjuna, but he was old enough. He was 16, but 16 was old enough to be a warrior, so he was fighting, and he was killed. But they were younger. And they were the children of the 5 Pandavas, one each year. Because each Pandava spent 1 year with Draupadi. And during that year, each one of them, there was a child. So at least the youngest would have been young. Yeah. Let's see now. What else we got here, if anything else? Okay. There may be another one. Let's see. The notice says no online classes next week. Did you hear that? I didn't. Well, let me just check my schedule. I have the official schedule here up to date. And next week, oh yeah, it's a study week. Next week is a study week. Okay, that's interesting. And if devotees have questions, we're having a question session on Sunday. So you can submit questions. You can submit questions and we'll answer them on Sunday. Because, I find it hard to believe that there aren't any questions, to be quite frank. I think there are questions. Are there questions? Actually, it's not in my schedule. Anyway, if there's questions, if not next Sunday, it's the Sunday after, in 2 weeks. 10 days. Sunday next week, there'll be questions and answers. So you can send in questions, and we'll definitely look at them Sunday the 7th. Sunday the 7th. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.